Cheryl, and we created this podcast as the Adult Leadership Advisory Board, or ALAB. Who we are in terms of ALAB is a group that focuses on issues, challenges, and difficult topics facing our community. We are working hard to develop educational programming, social tools, and fundraising initiatives to inform, include, and support adults with cystinosis, but ultimately anybody in our community, our friends, our families, our neighbors, and anybody that might or might not be affected by cystinosis. We, as the Adult Leadership Advisory Board, are funded and work under the Cystinosis Research Network. For those of you out there who might not necessarily understand or know what cystinosis is characterized by the accumulation of the amino acid, or one of the amino acids, cysteine, within the cells. When the cysteine builds up in the cells, it often forms crystals and will sometimes attack certain organs and tissues, predominantly the kidneys, but also includes the eyes, muscles, thyroid, brain, pancreas, and testes. Previously, it was known that an individual born with cystinosis would not live past 10. It's pretty grim, and I'm sure many families out there were quite devastated when they had a newborn who was diagnosed with this disease, cystinosis. However, today we have members in our community living well past 50 years old.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast. We are doing this podcast on mental health and awareness. I'm going to do a round introduction, and they will give a quick intro on themselves. So first, I'd like to introduce Ashley Abedini.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm based here in Wichita, Kansas. I have cystinosis, and I am a social media agency owner.
Thank you, Ashley. And next, I'd like to introduce Courtney.
Hey, I'm Courtney. I live in Alberta, Canada. I am a program facilitator, so I work with dementia and Alzheimer's clients, and I really love it, and I'm 30 years old.
Thank you, Courtney. And next, I'd like to introduce Devin.
Hi, I'm Devin. I'm in my 30s. I was diagnosed with cystinosis when I was 1 year old. I'm currently a student in fashion design.
Thank you, Devin. And next, I'd like to introduce Cheryl.
Hi, I am Cheryl. I live in Manitoba, Canada. I'm finishing my clinical hours and graduating with a master's degree in counseling psychology shortly. And I am living with cystinosis, and I'm 40.
All right. And next, I'd like to introduce Sara.
Hi, I'm Sara Healy. I am a part of ALAB. I have cystinosis. I was diagnosed at 18 months, and I'm a cook.
And thank you, Sara. Steve, do you want to give a quick intro on yourself?
Sure. I'm Steve. I'm also a part of ALAB. I'm 35, and I was diagnosed at 18 months.
Thank you, Steve. And I am Jana, and I am 40, and I was diagnosed with cystinosis at 18 months. And we will have a quick introduction with Cheryl on mental health and awareness.
Thanks so much, Jana. So I just want to say a quick piece about what this podcast is really focusing on today. So as we enter a world where mental health is becoming more and more in the forefront of conversations, so too has trauma and crisis. And it's quite relevant in our cystinosis community and with the general population with chronic disease and rare diseases. So that is what this podcast is focusing more on the side and topic of trauma, crisis, and stress while living with a chronic condition, namely cystinosis, which we all have said that we all have. So we on this podcast want to acknowledge some of the challenges and bring those challenges into conversation to the light. We've shared a little bit of an overview altogether with information about trauma. And what we want to do is continue sharing that. Myself and Maya Doyle, who is a prominent figure in the cystinosis community and has her master's social work and PhD. And we wanted to bring a little bit more information, which you will see after this podcast gets released live. But to start, just to dive a little bit into trauma, this term, trauma, is frequently used for such events that are extremely difficult or upsetting. But its real meaning focuses on the experiences that threaten our life and our safety. And for an individual or for someone we care about or that we witness, anything that threatens our life and our safety. and that overwhelms our ability to process or cope with it. So we often have emotions that arise, such as helplessness or hopelessness. Often we see shame, guilt, sadness, fear, or self-blame involved with experiences of trauma or re-traumatization, which is multiple traumas, or getting traumatized and then re-traumatized. And this can be very common in the medical field or when we're surrounded in the medical system. Experiencing different surgeries and diagnoses and not knowing what's going to happen to us the next day. Sometimes we face that often. And we often think about trauma around veterans, like wars or crime victims or those that involved with natural disasters. But we want to bring light to medical trauma, to the trauma that we face in our community and with chronic conditions and rare disease. So with no further ado, with this being said, just a little bit of information around trauma and stress when it comes to chronic conditions like cystinosis. We have prepared a number of questions that we want to ask everyone tonight on this podcast. And we want this podcast to focus on experiences so that we can share those experiences, learn from them, and just feel camaraderie because we all have gone through very similar things. So I'll pass the floor back to Jana, and we'll start with some questions for our guests tonight.
One of the first questions I'd like to ask is, how did you come to understand or define what you were experiencing as being connected to trauma?
I think for me, it took me a little longer after the fact. For me, going through dialysis was probably the most traumatizing experience in my life. Before then, I hadn't really had any medical issues, really. So I think it was after having a transplant that I realized how traumatizing that process of dialysis and transplantation was.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of really makes you feel helpless.
Well, I totally get it. When I was on dialysis, I was tired all the time. I had headaches. I didn't want to do anything. And it's basically, I had to go in and get it done. And that was 3 times a week sitting there for 3 to 4 hours while your blood filtered out and then feeling exhausted afterwards.
I think for mine, I started off pretty young because I remember there were kids I used to play with that had cystinosis with me, and unfortunately they didn't make it. And that was when, even at a young age, the reality kind of hit me pretty hard, unfortunately. You also notice it a bit more when you hang out with normal kids, I guess you could call the ones that don't have health issues, because you'll start talking to them and you'll realize, oh, okay, this isn't normal. And that's where things kind of start cluing in a little bit more.
Yeah, I know I experienced medical trauma when I had my transplant in 2013. It was supposed to be just an easy surgery, and it turned into one thing after another going wrong before I finally got to a healthy kidney. And I don't, I absolutely hate hospitals since then. Just even being in one just makes me want to cry.
Yeah, I get that. I've gotten stuck in hospitals multiple times, and lots of them because actually my first transplant didn't quite go well. And it was hard because it was actually my mom's kidney. I ended up having a bad allergic reaction to the first anti-rejection drug, and it unfortunately took them way too long to get me off of it, and my kidney took so much damage that it couldn't be saved. So then I ended up losing my first transplant that way.
That would have been very emotional, because I'm sure your mom was emotional about it too, because she gave her kidney to you.
It was really hard for the both of us because we both felt really helpless, and we kept on battling because we knew it was the medication, but we just felt like no one was listening. And unfortunately, by the time we did listen, it was too late.
Oh, I understand about that, because during dialysis, you know how they do the dry weight, and they weigh you when you come in, and then they take the general guideline of fluid off. Well, they kept doing that, but I kept telling them after a while I wasn't feeling right and I was gaining weight, and I just, I was getting to the point where I, was sleeping at a 90-degree angle because I just couldn't breathe flat. And nobody was listening to me. The transplant doctor that I went to do checkups before my transplant, he kept saying it was normal, and the doctor wasn't listening to me. So, I had to have my boyfriend come in with me in my final visit for transplant. And he had to tell him, look, she's not right. Her skin's like wax, and she just doesn't feel right. She can't sleep. She can barely walk. And they finally did like a echocardiogram, and, basically there was fluid around, and my heart was in like 30%, which is like heart failure. So because of their screw up and them not listening to me, what I was telling them over and over again, I had to wait an extra 3 months before I could even get the transplant. And my mom was pissed because she said, she yelled at the doctor and said, if she doesn't get her transplant because of this, I'm suing you all.
That sounds like your mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know your mother, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, unfortunately, doctors don't always listen. When I had my first transplant, I was in a hospital. You know how they do the whole pump you full of water thing?
Yes.
Okay. They were following what they called regulations, and like I was pumped full of so much water, my one leg was almost 2.5 of one of my legs because it was that swollen. Yeah, and I couldn't sit properly. I got all sorts of stretch marks all down in my thighs because they said they were following guidelines, and they kept on pumping me full of water despite my legs being that swollen. The doctor came in, looked at the nurse like, "What are you doing? Get her off of that."
Oh my
and she's
God.
like, "Oh, I was just following guidelines," and I'm sitting here like, "Have you looked at my leg?"
Not everybody is the same. That's why I hate guidelines. I just hate them. It's not the same for everyone.
Yeah, it's not.
I feel like it's hard too. You're like trying to research about dialysis, and like it's like cystinosis. There's so many things that could happen. So it's like you're reading somebody else's story, and that's almost traumatizing because then you realize all the problems out there. And so it's like doing your due diligence without getting over researched almost.
Well, one of the things that also always upset me was they almost try to go around the bad points. Like they don't always tell you what's going to happen. They say they do, but then something bad happens that they didn't tell you. You're like, oh yeah, that thing. I'm like,
yeah.
You couldn't have mentioned this before. We're like, oh, I thought we did. No. I would have remembered. Thanks. When I was first getting ready for my transplant, all I heard was the positives and how great I would feel and all this other stuff. They never told me any of the side effects of the medications. They never really explained that very well to me. They just made it sound like this go-to miracle thing. And then when I finally had my transplant done, and I had to take all the medication, and I was like, well, I'm like looking at all the side effects. And I'm like, well, like, I mean, yeah, it's great. I feel awesome now, but like these list of side effects is really vast on some of these medications.
Oh yeah, they are.
like how about a little bit of head warning?
Right. A bit of warning of what could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of these stories you're sharing are connected to the trauma in the sense of like your well-being. No one, yes, your life, but your well-being's at threat. You have to do this, you have to do that, and you're just not being heard.
Yep.
And that can be traumatizing in itself when you just are saying something over and over again and you know yourself and you're not heard.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems to happen quite often. Like, there's been a couple times with even my medication where I've taken certain meds and I know how my body reacts to things really well. I had something happen with, I have always slightly bruised easily, but then you add something like, prednisone, which thins out your skin, and then you had like a blood thinner. Like I look like a freaking Picasso painting on my legs. Like my legs are so bruised up. And I had a nurse actually pull me aside and accuse my boyfriend at the time of abusing me because I had so many bruises.
God.
And I'm like, no. I'm like, have you looked at the list of my medications? And they're like, oh, that usually doesn't happen, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I am on a blood thinner and prednisone thins out your skin, and I've already bruised easily. What did you think was going to happen? Like,
yeah, I bruise easily too. Yeah.
Like sometimes some of the things most of the time I've been pretty lucky with doctors. I've had a lot of really nice nurses, but there has been times where I've wondered how they got their job, like, and why.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of you guys were younger. I feel so like I think I was 38 when I realized I was experiencing trauma. But really my experience came when I thought that I was going through kidney failure and would need a third transplant. And I just remember feeling so irritated by everybody. Like I was like almost yelling at like the customers, or not the customers, sorry, like the cashier or someone at like a store. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm just like, what is going on with me? Like, why am I? And I realized I was just so like scared and angry. And I was like, I can't go through this again. It was 7 years ago. I don't want to go through this again. And I just realized, oh my God, like this is just this very helpless, hopeless feeling. And I have trauma. Like this is trauma. This is what this is.
I think one of the scary moments was when I was first put on prednisone, because they just said mild mood swings. Let me tell you, they were not mild. They put me on a high dose, and my mom literally looked at me. She's like, "That's not my child." Like, I was yelling, I was screaming, I was punching the bed, I was threatening to tear the IV out of my arms. I was like a little monster.
I had a similar reaction when I was in my 20s and going through a lot medically and just mentally and emotionally. And I remember just like yelling at this poor barista, and she didn't do anything to me. It was just like you guys were. I've been talking about. I was just so done with everything that was going on, and she just caught me at the wrong time.
Right.
Yeah, see, with me, I found I was more silent. I journaled, I wrote a lot. It was more internal, I think, with me. Like, but then actually, like, shouting at people, like, I would go really quiet. I would just spend a lot of time on my own if there's stuff like that, a lot of times.
I feel like it's easy to feel alienated because, a lot of us had transplants early 20s, even younger, and that's just such an uncharacteristic thing to experience during that time. I remember I was like 21, so a lot of my friends were out, going to nightlife and stuff like that, and I was on dialysis. So it's just such a hard thing to have to, explain to somebody my age, or just to expect somebody to understand, I think is like a big expectation as well.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking to people who don't have your health issues, I think sometimes you almost forget that your stuff is normal, because there has been times where I've had conversations with people kind of forgetting that my health situation isn't actually a normal situation. And I would be talking to them like it was just an everyday thing. And the look of almost horror I would get on some of their faces, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I would realize, like, oh, right, that's not normal. That's just a me thing, not a them thing. And I
feel like also too, like their reaction's almost traumatizing.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're so concerned and you are so used to it on a day-to-day basis, and you see the look of concern on their face, like, oh man, that's kind of traumatizing as well,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It brings out other emotions when you're like, oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, for me, I was like 12 when I realized that my life was traumatizing. I got depression when I was 12 years old, and I moved from a small town to a city, and I smelled really bad, so I didn't make any friends. Like I had from grade 8 to grade 11, I had 0 friends, and that is traumatizing in itself, just going through high school completely alone. And I've also had my entire body become paralyzed because my potassium got so low, which was very traumatizing because that's very close to like dying. That's the closest probably I've been to death. Like
I've
my
had
tongue.
that happen. It's very painful.
Scary. Yeah. And then later on in life, my bones started breaking randomly. So like my feet broke because I wore heels. My arm broke because I was carrying a kitty litter box. My other arm broke because I was trying to get my cat off my counter. My knee broke for no reason at all. And my ribs broke from laying on the floor. So I had like a dozen fractured bones. So that was probably the most traumatizing thing I've ever been through, having to go through that much pain every single day. And it happened for like years straight because of osteomalacia. So like with Fanconi syndrome, we leak everything out. And that's why my bones wouldn't heal, because I leaked everything out that I needed. And the reason why my bones broke was because the CO2, I couldn't get my CO2 up. So it was always like so my body, I guess, developed metabolic acidosis, and that's how my bones broke. And then they couldn't heal because of osteomalacia. And then after that, I had a kidney transplant, and I had to reopen the incision twice. And I don't know. That's a lot in itself. There's more to add to that, but that's basically the most traumatizing things in my life. And I feel like we need to recognize medical trauma more.
I get it. Bullying was a really bad thing for me too. I didn't really have many friends, and unfortunately, lots of the friends that I did have took advantage of me. I've had kids, friends that I thought were trusting steal from me. I had one friend who I thought was trusting actually spread a rumor about me, which made the whole school hate me. So I had to eat lunch in the bathroom. And
I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I had a kid tell me when he smelled something, the cysteamine on me. I think it was like 7th or 8th grade. That I should be, I told him I had to take it or else I would die. And he said, well, then you should just die.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so bad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've had something similar. It's horrible, as some kids will say.
Yeah.
How can you not feel so helpless and hopeless, right? With all of these experiences. I mean, and all the medical experiences we go through, being stuck in the medical system, not being heard, and then the smell, the bullying. There's so many layers of trauma.
And sometimes the parents can get in on it too. I know when Sara and I were in grade school, some of the parents went up to our parents and asked if it was catchable, if it was contagious, and should we really be in school? And our dad's like, first off, you really think we would have them in school if they were contagious? They are not contagious.
My mom told me a story of adults when I was like an infant, when we were in school, because it was back when you had to have potpourri in your pockets because the smell was so bad, because the sister gun was rather new. About parents accusing my mother of not bathing me.
Wow.
That's what kids used to think about me too in elementary. They thought I smelled bad because I didn't wash myself.
No.
I had a couple of bosses as an adult kind of say the same thing to me, even after I explained multiple times that, no, this is the medicine I take and I really can't do all that much about it.
Multiple times, really?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not being heard there.
Gosh.
I've had the potassium thing too actually happen to me on my birthday. My potassium crashed. Yeah, and it was on my birthday, and it was actually during one of the worst snowstorms we've had here in years. Everything was shut down. My mom had to dig a path so the ambulance could actually get in. I couldn't move, and my mom was in the other room. I was sleeping there for some reason. I don't remember why, because I actually technically had my own place at the time. I had to roll over because I couldn't move anything, so I had to roll over and carefully try to use my phone to dial my mom. Luckily, my mom's one of the numbers I always dial, so it was really easily to get.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't shout, I couldn't even scream.
Yeah, I couldn't move my tongue. My tongue was completely frozen. I was lucky enough that I was already in the hospital, but then since I couldn't even move my fingers or anything, so they grabbed me and they were carrying me on the side of them, through there, because they couldn't move me at all either. I was so stiff, and so it was just they were carrying this log through the halls to emergency.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
The doctor felt so bad when I was in there that he was like, "Do you want a cupcake with a candle in it or something?" I'm like, just make me feel better, and we're even.
Yeah. I had a feeding tube for 16 years too, nearly 16 years. I finally got it out on my birthday. But going through high school, smelling weird and having a feeding tube is not fun. But once I got it out, I had this hole in my stomach. They tried cauterizing it multiple times a week. So that was extremely painful.
That sounds horrifying.
It was horrifying. Burning the inside of my stomach multiple times a week. But it didn't close. So I had to eventually sew it up, which I should have done in the first place.
Sat with me first. Why is it that?
Yeah, just sew it up. Don't burn us.
Yeah. You'd think after the first time they'd be like, "Oh, this isn't working."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's try it.
I had a G-tube 1 to 13, but they just sewed mine shut.
Yeah, exactly. But once I had that hole in my stomach, the kids at school actually thought it was kind of cool that my insides came out of my hole.
Check this out. Show and tell.
It was so weird. When I had a tube, they were like, "Ew, gross, what is that?" And then when I had a hole in my stomach, they're like, "Oh my God, that's cool."
People are weird.
It's very weird.
Really weird. Okay.
Yeah, they are weird.
One of the stupidest things that my doctors did, okay, I don't know why they decided to do it this way. Okay, you know with cystinosis you get rickets, right? So your legs bend sometimes. I had really bad knock knees as a kid. But instead of the surgery, they decided to, hey, let's put these two plastic things on your leg that are like casts, put a metal bar between her legs, and slowly tighten that bar to slowly bend her legs back in proper position as she apparently sleeps, which I did not sleep. So, yeah, whoever's decided bending my bones back into position would be a good way and not doing the surgery, I was not a happy child.
No.
Yeah. Sara and I got the surgery. Yeah. They did not do that.
Yeah, they decided to do that first. Yeah. And apparently I would just sleep right through it, according to them. I mean.
Maybe they should try it and see if they sleep through it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So I'm kind of curious because with everything that we're talking about, this is some beyond challenging events and things that we face, emotions that we face growing up. So I'm wondering if anyone has sought help and what made you decide to seek help. At what point do you feel with everything happening, you're like, I need a little bit of support here?
I think my last straw for me was I was doing a lot of art and journaling, and that was really helping a lot for a while. But unfortunately, I started realizing I slowly needed help, and I lost a friend. She committed suicide, and that was when I realized that I needed extra help. So I went, and that was what pushed me to get the help that I needed.
Yeah. It's too hard to go through alone.
Yeah.
I was like younger than, I think I was about 16 and she was only like 14, I think.
You're so young. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess for me it was in college, and it was kind of because my whole life kind of fell apart on me within a really short amount of time. Um, because of so I got pseudotumor cerebri, and which wasn't that bad, but the treatment for it, I had a really bad reaction to the medication. Like it gave me, like it affected my mind and my emotions. And then I had a really bad roommate, and just a lot of life stuff happened all at the same time. Um, and it was getting to the point where I didn't know how to get out of the state of mind I was in on my own. And the school offered psychological help for a certain amount of sessions. Um, so I decided to seek that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your story sounds a little similar to mine, Steve. I'm trying to think of how old I was. I was maybe mid to late 20s. And for me, it was going through my second kidney failure, because it's like, it's so different when you're a kid and you just have the support for your parents. I just remember going through the motions and sort of la da 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 when I was 11. You know, oh, this hospital food's great. Oh, I feel great. Okay. But when you're in your like late 20s and you're in a career, you know, I had to give up my career. I had to utilize a lot of my savings. I saw like a long-term relationship ending. It was just so many things, like you said, Steve, that were kind of just all collapsing on me. And I just felt like so hopeless. And I just felt like there was, tying into kind of some of this trauma, is the loss and the grief. I just felt like so much loss. And the traumatization I had with the first kidney transplant that I had, and the second one it was just like losing everything. It was just so traumatic for me. So I went and I sought counseling and therapy, and it really helped me just to sit down and talk to someone else, like a third party, right? Someone who doesn't know my story, doesn't know me. It was just very cathartic to talk about trauma and loss in my counseling supports. It's an impossible situation.
I saw a counselor, and honestly, she didn't do much for me. I was told to try psychology, but unfortunately, that costs an arm and a leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't afford that, so.
Yeah. Like it helps if you have, you know, through work, like a few sessions covered at least, but not everyone has access to that. Like,
yeah. And at that time, when I was seeking like more so help, I wasn't with my husband, so we didn't really have that kind of coverage.
yeah.
In Alberta, it's actually free for therapy, especially if you go through Alberta Health Services. There are private people that offer therapy, but they're super expensive. But yeah, it's free through Alberta Health Services. So I see one now, but for me, like, I didn't start seeking help. So first I developed social anxiety from all the like smelling weird.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so then I didn't make friends very easily. So in college, I went to college. I thought I would make friends. I didn't make any friends. I didn't have friends. And then that's when I kind of like hit rock bottom. And I've also, now I have OCD, anxiety, Tourette's, and depression. So I have a lot going on. And it's all because of all the traumatic things that happened. So once I hit rock bottom, I was like, okay, well, I've hit rock bottom a couple times before I actually sought out help. And I was like, hey, I'm not normal. I need some help.
Yeah.
And that's finally when I got help. But yeah, it's hard getting help at first.
It is. Well, we do technically have therapy that is covered here, but the problem is the waiting list is like ridiculously long.
Yeah.
So like, even if I do go and try to get some, like I'm waiting at least a year at least.
Oh, that's a really long wait.
Yeah, it is. So luckily, I think some of our coverage should be hopefully kicking in soon. We'll hopefully cover one. So no, I get the whole social anxiety thing though. Like even now, like I still have a whole bunch of issues to work through. My anxiety, like around people, is still really bad. Like I'll catch myself consistently worrying if like a person's behavior slightly changes and stuff like that, because I'll be super sensitive to it just because of how many people I've had like lie to me in the face and stuff like that. So I'll always watch people's behavior to a point where I'm like almost paranoid. And it's really bad. And like even my husband's like, you have to stop this. You're gonna drive yourself crazy. Like, I know.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I tend to watch my behavior and I care more. Like I care what people think, but I don't. I always feel like there's people watching me at all times, and I know that's all in my head, but that's just a part of like the social anxiety that I've developed. I just always feel like people are always watching me.
Yeah, I have a bit of both, unfortunately. I'm a lovely mixture.
That's okay.
I think we're all just a little bit of a mess. It's fine.
Yes, I agree.
For me, I'm bipolar type 1. And so I was diagnosed when I was 23. And so type 1, it's more so you have an abundance of energy, like you sleep a very little amount, but despite that, you have an abundance of energy. You have like grandiose thoughts. And so I was going through like a breakup when I was 23. It was kind of just like you guys had experienced a lot of things kind of compile. And I actually had advice from a friend to go to a to sign myself up to a psych hospital. And I trusted my friend, so I did that. And I think it was probably the best place that I could have been at that point. So they diagnosed me with bipolar. And it's been kind of a journey since. It's not an easy diagnosis to have. But I've been doing proper medication, and I see a psychiatrist and a therapist, which have really helped. It's not been easy. There's been certain pitfalls. I feel like it took me a while to really understand that I do have bipolar. It's a very like complicated diagnosis, but that's kind of been my journey.
I can't imagine how you felt getting diagnosed so later on in your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was always well behaved. Like I never had social anxiety. I always like made friends fairly well. So it was quite a shock because I've never, not to say I wasn't in trouble, but like it was a shock, and it kind of came out of nowhere. Like even my family was quite surprised by that.
That's kind of similar to my Tourette's, because I was just recently diagnosed like a couple months ago. And for me, being diagnosed was a huge relief because I knew I was doing all these weird things and I didn't have control over them. And then I was finally like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
I get it. I was diagnosed with ADHD after high school, and I remember almost being like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, because there'd be times where I would be studying and I would read half a chapter of a book and not even remember it like a minute later. And I would fall asleep almost in tears on my book thinking, why aren't I understanding this? Why aren't I remembering all this information? Why is this so hard for me? And it went like that throughout my whole like high school. And then I finally got diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, well, that's why I was struggling so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard when you get diagnosed later in age. You could have started treatment earlier on.
It's really interesting how everyone with cystinosis seems to have something else correlated. It never seems to just be cystinosis.
No.
I feel like I'm really interested in like the implications of having cystigon for so long, because you're so used to not sleeping. If you're either taking the medicine really well or you're sleeping really well. You're not taking the medicine and sleeping well. And so I feel like there's a higher incidence of cystinosis and like psychosis amongst, everything else. So yeah, I feel like it's really interesting because Dr. Gall, I think, spoke to it a little bit. But it's hard because it's like most of us haven't slept well our whole lives,
Right.
because of medicine, you know.
I've always been a night hog, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the fact I had to wake up like to take meds, but like it drives my husband crazy because he's like, I'll be like watching anime at like 2 a.m. in the morning. He's like, I have to work. Go to bed. Like, fine.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. I have a hard time in the, like going to bed. And I've always had troubles. It's either like it's 3 a.m. and I haven't slept yet, or it's like midnight, I wake up and I can't go back to bed. Or it's like 3 a.m. and I can't go back. And that's the thing. I didn't have a community like this growing up when did this start? Like I probably was 12 or 10 the first time I remember not being able to sleep, but 15, 16, 17, 18, I never had this community realize, oh, like maybe it's not just me. Like,
well, even when I did sleep, I was like hardcore sleep. There was no waking me up. Like my mom had to make a tape. Like I'm aging myself here. Okay. She had to record a tape and with her voice on it telling me to wake up because that was the only thing that would wake me up when I actually did finally fall asleep.
Interesting.
Oh,
Courtney.
Sorry.
No, okay.
I had a pump throughout the night too, like the feeding pump. So I never got like any sleep growing up, and now I'd still just I can fall asleep easily, but I wake up throughout the night.
That feeding pump was a pain. I had it too, and whenever if you roll the wrong way, the thing would pop off, and then all of a sudden you had like the formula all over your back.
Exactly. I know.
And you were like, it's like. You would wake up and be like, oh, man.
Exactly. And you'd be like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm curious, too, with all of, like, our sleep issues and all, like, these other issues that come along with cystinosis. And Devin, like you're saying, there's always seems to be something else, right? Some other condition. I'm wondering what you guys do for, like, self-care.
I sleep a lot.
Yeah.
Honestly, art was my biggest relief, and it still kind of is. I actually started off, because I'm in fashion design, but I started off doing art because it was something I could do with my hands, because muscle deterioration is really common in your fingers and stuff. So I started drawing, writing, painting, anything I could do with my hands to help the muscles. And that kind of just went on from there, and I realized how much it helped me cope with everything that was around me. And then it just kind of started picking up more and more hobbies that had to do with art.
Yeah.
I always gravitated towards more creative stuff too. I started playing guitar when I was like 14, and I did theater for a number of years, and then I eventually I went to school for graphic design, and got into that.
I do the arts as well. Painting mainly, and I also like to bake and cook, but mainly the painting helps me, like oil paintings or acrylic.
Mm-hmm.
For me, well, it's an artist thing too, but for me, singing helps because to me, the lyrics of a song can say a lot. So depending on my mood or my feeling, if I can just go to karaoke, then I can just let all my feelings out and just sing it out.
That's my stage fright is so bad. I would just be standing there like, hello people, bye-bye.
Hello.
Oh man, I used to get terrible stage fright. That's actually part of the reason why I got into theater, and I did it in a progressive kind of way where I started off like backstage and then and eventually went on stage, and it was actually easier to do theater on stage than it was to give like a speech in front of people, because on the stage that we had, you couldn't see the audience, so you were just staring out, and it was just like black space basically.
Yeah.
See, I think it's kind of like I did cosplay for a while, and for me, when I did the costumes, I would mimic the character's voice. I would really get into like the personality. So I could actually do that pretty well. And I think the reason is because you could almost get out of your like own body, like you could be someone else. So it was like I wasn't me, I was someone else who didn't have anxiety, if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's also that's a good point too. It was part of the reason why it was so much easier was because I was playing a character versus when I was trying to give a speech like myself. I was always a lot more self-conscious.
For me, one of the things for self-care is yoga. I really got into it. I did like a 200 teacher training. It was really beneficial. I felt like before I got into yoga, I realized like how many times have I truly taken the time to breathe and do like mindfulness. And I think mindfulness is so important because we get so wrapped up in everyday to-dos and work that we sometimes just don't take time for ourselves. So I just find that to be pretty beneficial.
One of my favorite things to do lately is I live near a lot of wooded paths and stuff like that. So I will go for a long walk, but I will leave all my electronics behind. So no phone, no nothing. I will just go for a walk so I can just like listen and like kind of meditate in a way, I guess, because it's just me outside and it's just really relaxing and it's just a really nice feeling. It's good exercise and it just really helps me clear my head.
Walking's great.
Yeah, I feel like I do social media for a living, and so like I know more than anybody how an impact like having social media, having screens are all the time.
I can't do social media. I don't know how you do it.
Like I do a lot of yoga. I take a lot of medicine. No, I feel like I've been trying to do little things. Like I wake up and I try not to have my phone with me for like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a small thing, but like it does a lot. And like, you know, I won't have my phone. I'll try not to have my phone like 10 minutes before I go to sleep because just like I'll doom scroll on like social media. And,
oh God, I'm so bad for that. I'm so bad for doom scrolling.
I mean, I relate. Sometimes I'll be like mindlessly scrolling and I have to tell myself, like, am I really working right now? Like what's the point of it? You know, what's the intention, right?
See, for my career, I need to get used to social media because I need to like advertise myself and stuff like that. But in all honesty, I'm absolutely terrible for it. I can't do it. I find it almost exhausting. And I have so many friends that can make videos and do all this stuff, and it's so easy for them. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. No,
I've tried. It's hard. I've tried.
Yeah. I'm definitely with you, Devin and Ashley, in terms of yoga, just being present in the moment or going for walks outdoors in the woods. I feel like when I'm with a bunch of trees on a path and I look up, I just feel, it might sound silly, but I just feel so tiny and small and insignificant that it makes me really humble, if that makes any sense. It just makes me feel like, oh yeah, that's not important. Those things.
We have a ton of wildlife here, so I'll go for walks and see deers and stuff like that. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I saw a surprise buck the other day.
Nice.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of deer, but especially during like the pandemic and stuff, we tended to see more deer and lots of rabbits. Like I swear there was like a family of rabbits at one point in every single person's yard.
Hey man, there's a reason why there's a saying, say breeding like rabbits, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, one of the things I did to cleanse myself recently, and it was something I saw on a video on YouTube, I was a complete social media cleanse. I shut down my Facebook, I shut down my Instagram, I backed away from Facebook for almost a month, like everything social media wise. I only would have my phone for people to contact me. And it was amazing how much my anxiety decreased, my depression decreased. I felt so different, and I honestly didn't think it was going to make that big of a difference, but it really did.
Yeah, different things for different people, for sure. Putting that away, putting the noise away, I guess, right?
A lot of times when I walk, though, I do kind of the opposite. I'm either listening to lately it's been listening to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or listening to music.
I used to listen to music a lot on my walks, I won't lie, but I find it's a different experience when you just leave it behind and just go without your music.
I've done that before too, and it is really peaceful when you just go with nothing.
Mm.
Yeah.
My dog forces me to go on walks every day, but it's actually therapeutic, so that's okay.
Little Archie. And Archie's self-care.
Animals are great though. Like they really help.
They really do.
My youngest cat, his name is Maui. We got him during the pandemic and during when I was going through dialysis, because going through dialysis around the end of pandemic, but it was still like when everything was like quarantined and stuff like that. And I was also going through radiation at the same time as dialysis because they found a benign tumor on my neck, but it was on the right side of my face that was on the nerve that controls the whole right side of my face. So they had to do radiation to stop it from growing. Otherwise, I could have been paralyzed on the right side of my face.
Mm.
So I was doing that, going through dialysis, and it was going through the pandemic. I was not in good shape. But around that time, we got Maui. And honestly, he helped me so much through all of that. He was my buddy. He slept in my lap. He always made sure I was okay. He purred he used to sleep right in my neck and just purr in my ear. And he was my baby. And now he's still a mama's boy. So there's not much has changed really there. But he helped me so much through that. And I honestly, I was sleeping so much, and if it wasn't for my cats and my husband, I don't think I would have been able to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it weren't for my dog, I wouldn't get through a lot. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you know what? Else, dogs, cats, animals, they don't tell you smell.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're not boys.
Yeah.
They actually I know my dog, every time I put drops in or take the meds, he's smelling me. He loves the smell. It's so weird.
That's cute.
Maybe that's why my cat cleans me all the time. I don't know.
They just love you unconditionally.
Yeah,
exactly. Archie isn't a very cuddly dog, so when I'm down or I'm not feeling well, what he'll do is he'll bring his toy right to my face because he knows that makes me laugh.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
When I'm not feeling well, lots of times I'll be sleeping in the bed and then I'll have lamps on my pillow and then I'll have Maui sleeping right against my legs. So I'm I can't move because I have both my cats trapped me. But then I have my oldest cat, he purrs so loudly, so I have him purring right in my ear. And then I have my other cat just happy feeding my legs.
Whenever I would dog sit for my brother and sister-in-law, and I got to feeling sick and laid on the couch, their dogs would just curl up next to me.
Aww.
Dogs and animals in general just have such a good sense of when you're not feeling good. They're so good at comforting you.
They really are.
Yeah.
Animals are a big self-care for us. And I actually just remembered a big one for me in terms of self-care is compassion. I always tell myself, what would I really tell my friend? Would I really be telling my friend this? No. So have a little bit more compassion and patience for yourself. That's a big one for me. And it's finally kicking in. It only took, 40 years?
I'm not very good at the whole patience thing.
Yeah.
I feel like it sounds hokey at first, but I think positive affirmations are really important.
Mm-hmm.
And even just having positive affirmations in a mirror, which I used to kind of laugh at, to be honest, but I feel starting the day, especially there's a lot of science to it. When you wake up, how you program your brain is so important for the rest of the day. So if you can somehow get out of negative spiral thinking, which is very hard to do, I think that's a natural thing, but just trying to tell yourself good things, good things are coming my way. I am worthy of all the good things coming my way is so helpful,
I have actually a music playlist that's called my happy mix, and it's all the music from that gives me either happy memories or positivity and stuff like that, and that's what I listen to a lot in the morning.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of angry music because I'm angry about life and it gets the anger out. Like heavy metal.
I listen to heavy metal, so yeah, I listen to a bit of that too. I listen to it. My mix is really weird. Okay, mine goes from Frank Sinatra to like Disney to like Slipknot. So like,
I'm right there with you.
Awesome.
People get very confused when like my windows are open and I'm driving and listening to music. Okay.
At one point, when I drive around with my friends with my iPod plugged into my car, it had like Harry Potter, and then like the book, the book Harry Potter, and then like Nintendo music from video games, and then like Coldplay.
Nice.
I have a song about Cthulhu.
Nice.
And then I also have a song that's from Frozen that things will make sense when I am older.
My friends used to be so confused when they got in my car because I'm like this very petite blonde person who's also seems like she's a bubbly person, and then they get in my car and it's heavy metal rap music.
Yeah.
I would
Mine
sometimes
will go from like Eminem, Slipknot, Disturbed, and then all of a sudden Frank Sinatra. What else? I can't even think of anything right now. Oh, also opera. Phantom of the Opera musicals. Yeah.
I would sometimes intentionally pick songs to weird people out just to see their reactions.
I think the funniest moment was when my friend came in the car and I was playing the do 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 do, and she's like, they come in the car and you're like, do I need to be concerned? I'm just like, no.
So random music, animals, creativity, outdoors. These are all things that we have self-care for. Now, and speaking about self-care, I also am a big believer in advocacy. I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this in terms of like, the medical system, doctors, our peers, employers, all those people that we sort of named throughout the podcast. Like, what's a message that you would want to tell them in terms of why it's important to understand trauma and medical trauma and chronic conditions? Like, what do you think is like a message you want or something to say? Like, why is it important for them to understand?
I think it's important to understand because of like, unfortunately, sometimes our trauma can actually affect even what our symptoms look like, the cystinosis and stuff like that. And also, like, it helps with our trauma. Sometimes it makes it hard for us to communicate even our issues and our problems because we don't know how to.
Yeah.
I think also like it helps them to understand, be more empathetic towards their situation, have more like of a listening ear, and actually they'll never understand what we go through, but they could at least be empathetic and supportive. And if everyone would actually understand that, we would have a nicer world.
And listen when we tell you something.
Yes.
I am tired of arguing with doctors or nurses when I've taken a medication for years and they're like, oh, this doesn't do this. Taking it for years. I know what it does.
Yeah.
I think that empathy part is really important. And I think a lot of times, it's a good reminder that you can't necessarily see trauma. A lot of us seem really healthy from the outside. And also, I think there's a correlation where a lot of us have trauma related to hospitals. And so, like, for me, there's trauma going into, like, a psych hospital because of that correlation. So just trying to have empathy.
100%.
Yeah.
Empathy towards re-traumatization. Yeah. Steve, sorry, go.
No, it's okay. there's been, I think, scientific proof proving that everything's kind of connected in a holistic way. So our like mental and emotional trauma, just like was already mentioned, it can affect our body. So just from that point of view, it's important to understand the trauma people are going through because it's part of their medical background if you're going to a doctor.
Yeah, and it's part of their identity too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I find when I go to the doctor, I mean, we have a good one now, but before that, because of how young Sara and I look, they always look to our parents and answered our parents instead of talking to us and seeing how we felt, which, in itself caused depression in Sara and I.
Yeah.
It's weird because I find I have a similar issue, but it's more, they don't seem to take me seriously. It's like I have to have my husband in the room a lot of times with certain doctors in order for them to even listen and take me seriously. And I don't know why that's the situation, but it's happened on multiple times with different doctors, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Is it? I know sometimes, not even inside the medical world, but if I'm talking to someone and they don't know that I have cystinosis, and then I tell them I have cystinosis, they start to treat me completely differently than, even though I'm the same person. I just told you I had cystinosis. So I don't know. It seems like there's a there's a stigma attached to people who have any sort of disease being treated, like they're lesser.
Yeah, like disability equals not equal. Excuse me? That's not right. That's not right. We're all equal.
Yeah. It would help with ableism as well if people understood what we have to go through.
Absolutely. We can live meaningful lives with a chronic condition.
I wish more doctors would go to like the cystinosis conferences and stuff like that. I don't think enough, especially even Canadian doctors, go.
I got lucky. My doctor in Calgary, he goes to every single one of them. And people from all across Canada, I think, go to see him because of that. And he's only a 3-hour drive from me, so I got lucky.
Nice. Yeah, my doctor, I think, has been to one or two, but I'm not sure if he's been to any recent ones. He has mentioned going to the international one if I go, so we'll see what happens.
That's good.
Yeah. And Steve, you brought up a good point about the holistic piece too, with like, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. I've always thought that we should have like facilities that have not only doctors, like GPs in them, or specialists, but also massage therapists, physiotherapists, and counselors or therapists. Like, why not, one-stop shop for everything, so to speak. It's not a great term,
Oh,
but
God, I would still give so much for a massage therapist. You have no idea.
all connected.
Oh, I have so many leg aches and stuff from all the surgeries I've had. I would so love one.
Right? You go for a little massage, you go for a little talk therapy, you end it with like maybe there's like a donut shop right beside or something, like pastries. Like that's
now I want cake. Thanks.
Donut therapy.
Never done that.
Now I'm gonna have to get cake tomorrow. That's it. I need cake. You can't tell by looking at me, but I have actually eaten a whole cake to myself before. This is what happens when you're an emotional eater. Also, cake is just good.
Cake is delicious.
Yeah.
Cake, pie, pastry.
There's this chocolate truffle mousse cake that this bakery has not that far from me, and oh my God, it is so good.
It sounds like, I mean, with chronic conditions, with rare disease, like there are unavoidable traumas or re-traumatizations, right? Ultimately, that's sort of it at the end of the day. I mean, there is self-care, there are practices and support that we can turn to, like we've all discussed. It sounds like in terms of the community, families, doctors, health professionals, in terms of reducing the burden, right? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of what we're saying is equality, respect, feeling heard, listening to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, I've only had one GP in my life who has actually turned to me, looked at me, listened to me, nodded, come back and responded to me, advocated for me, one doctor. I don't know about any of the other ones, about you others, but that's been one experience.
Well, it took me forever to find a knee doctor that would listen to me. And I finally have one, and that's why I've had 2 osteotomies, one this year, one last year, because he's actually looked at my legs and was like, okay, we need to fix this. Unfortunately, it took this long to find one, and unfortunately my left leg took a lot of damage because it had to wait to find them, but at least I finally have one now.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be your own advocate. Even within mental health, not all therapists are treated or, should be equal. Yeah. I had a bad experience with a therapist, and I needed to trust my gut because they were taking me off medication that I've been taking for 10 years. And I just knew something wasn't right. And so I think sometimes we have to be our own advocate and trust our intuition.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think it's important to be your own advocate. Even if I am talking to a friend, or I always advocate for myself, because if they can't accept all of me, then I don't want to be their friend. Or for my workplace, I'm pretty honest with my health, even to my workforce, because I do have to take off a lot of appointment dates, but I always advocate for myself, and I don't want to work for a company that's not supportive of that. So I think advocating for yourself is very important.
I'm very open about my health and everything that I've gone through and things like that. And unfortunately, I think that actually sometimes puts some people off because I don't think they really expect me to be as open as I am. And I think it's just because my attitude is, this is my life. This is what I've gone through. I can't change it. I mean, I'm not going to hide it. That's like hiding a part of me. Unfortunately, that is a part of my life. So I'm going to talk about it. And unfortunately, that really puts people off sometimes.
Yeah, true. I feel the same way.
I kind of agree with you, and I'm sort of like you as well, like Devin, what you're saying in terms of being open. I mean, Courtney, I think you said it really shows who your friends are then, because it's like, well, if you can't take this and you can't take this about me, then I don't want to spend my time with you.
Yeah.
Right? Employers, if they're going to penalize you because you have a doctor's appointment, do you want to work for them? Being transparent has always worked for me. When things go south, like they sometimes do with chronic conditions, you don't have to, it's not a surprise, if that makes sense to them. They already know what's going on, and they can hopefully, not always, but hopefully be more supportive. Yeah. Well, others, advocacy messages to help reduce the burden of trauma and what we go through.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
I think also asking us questions, like not being afraid to ask us stuff. Because I've had doctors kind of beat around the bush so much, and they almost seem like they're almost scared to ask stuff sometimes. I'm like, don't we just ask?
I love it when people ask questions about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my doctor, my nephrologist I've had for a few years, he didn't know anything about cystinosis when I first had him, but his willingness to learn and be a partner with me is one of the reasons why he's been one of the best doctors I've had.
I have to say, my doctor, he's pretty awesome. I mean, like when I have a question or when I'm scared or something, I'll email him. And even if he's on vacation, he will actually take time out of his day to message me back, because he knows I don't usually message him unless I feel like it's really important.
I have a doctor like that too. It's very important to have a good doctor.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lots of Lots of great stories, lots of sharing self-care and tips and strategies and messages to those that we have to deal with, or I shouldn't say deal with, those who we sort of walk alongside on this earth. Be more kind.
Yeah. I think this thing to take away is none of us are quote unquote normal. All of us have something to deal with. Yes, we have genetic disorders, but someone else may have gone through some huge trauma that we don't know about, that now they're dealing with, I don't know, PTSD. We don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. And the best thing to do is, if you're not sure, ask.
Absolutely. Open up the dialogue.
I think for some people, like I found if I'm more open about my disease at work, it can make some people uncomfortable. Me talking about it, so I kind of am really quiet at work. Like they poke fun at me for how quiet I am, but really it's because I can't really talk about my life because it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I had someone accuse me of being too dramatic because I'm open about my health.
What?
Yeah.
Same. I've had someone I love say I'm too dramatic, and they haven't even seen me that day, so they didn't even know what was going on. I've had that multiple times. People call me dramatic, or not multiple people, but a couple people I love would call me dramatic. Just
dramatic or depressing was another one I got a lot.
Yeah, be more positive. I'm like, no, I'm just being real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's hard to be positive. Any other thoughts, guys, from today?
Well, I don't think we actually went through the stubbornness yet.
No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't. What does that mean, Sara? I don't know. Or Jana, I don't know what that question means.
Oh, it's it says helplessness and hopelessness versus stubborn independence. Basically, you're not able to do something, but you're being stubborn about it and being like, I can still do it.
Yeah. I think that goes on to the factor that we're told a lot that to not do something, or that we can't do something, especially with all of our health problems. So we get to the point where we're like, well, I'm going to do it and you can't stop me. Because we're tired of people telling us we can't do it. And like, even to this day, I still get that stubborn attitude a lot of times, and it drives my husband nuts. Because he'll even tell me sometimes that, like, show proof that I'm wrong sometimes, and I'll be like, I'm not looking. If I don't look, I'm right. He's like, really? Really, Devin? And I'm like, nope. I'm right, you're wrong.
I think that's just so, I mean, I get that way too. And I feel like because of all we've been through, that we feel like we have to constantly prove ourselves. Or I feel that way anyway. Especially at work. Like they'll always ask me if I need help, but I'm always like, no, I got it.
Oh, I hate when people ask me if I need help. It really bothers me. I almost get really irritated and edgy and a little bit mouthy to people when they ask me if I need help. I'm a lot better than I have been. But, like, it used to be really bad.
I'll get really sarcastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to rely on my parents so much and like other people growing up because I was always throwing up or I was too sick to do something. So now that I'm actually able to do things for myself, I'm actually very stubborn about it. Like when all my bones started breaking, I had to move in with my parents, but I should have done it a lot sooner than what I did. But I didn't want to admit that I needed help because I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else. And I felt like I used to be a burden all the time. And now I don't want to be a burden to anyone. And I just feel like, yeah, that's in the back of my mind all the time.
Yeah.
I relate. I feel like I'm very stubborn. But I try to remind myself, like, it does take a village. Like, even if it's like a professional athlete, like it's not just him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just trying to remind myself that I do often have to remind myself that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny because I think everyone who has a health problem, because my husband, he had cancer at the age of 10. He's totally clean now. But one of the funny thing he's gotten from his health stuff is you can't tell him to do something because then he won't do it. Like he just won't. And it drives me bloody nuts. But that's his quirk that I think he just got from all his health background. And now I got my stubbornness, so we have a really interesting marriage. We love each other, but there are times.
Yeah. For me, it brings up though the idea of sort of actually kind of tying in what you're saying, the idea of support versus like independence, or support versus what's the word for, like where you're so dead set on doing something yourself that you can't even see that they're just trying to be a little bit of support or be a little bit supportive, because like actually you're saying it does take a village. People do need to support and help you, and it's okay to say, yeah, I need some help. That's not weakness, that's strength.
I'm getting better, I swear. I'm trying.
Courtney, you mentioned something. I heard you.
I just said that I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, right.
I'm still working on it. I'm still pretty stubborn. I just can't help it sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll be doing my homework and Eric will hear me swearing in the other room and he'll come into you like, can I help? I'm like, no. He's like, okay.
I think for me, it's there's about like half the time when I'm physically able to do everything fine, and so those moments when I'm not able to physically do what I normally can do, it's
really hard on your mental health.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like I literally could do this like last week and I was fine, and now it's almost like I get mad at myself and then I get mad at other people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I get that. My issue is like even after transplant, I still every once in a while I'll have my days when I'm really tired. So like, especially when I have a lot to do during the week, like I'll get up and if I don't have the same amount of energy I normally have, I'm like taking it easy myself and feeling guilty because I haven't been able to do all the stuff that's on my to-do list, even though it's logically, I mean, I'm allowed to have 1 or 2 days where I don't feel good because, it happens, but I just feel horribly guilty when I don't have that energy.
Mm-hmm. I do the exact same thing. Yeah. I make to-do lists, and when I don't finish them, I get so mad at myself. But you got to remember to take it easy, and you're allowed to have rest days. I have to constantly remind myself that I'm allowed to get sick, because
yeah, because we've all experienced that. We don't want to admit it. I think an important thing is acceptance. Like with that self-compassion comes acceptance. Because I know being 40 now, I can feel it a little bit harder, like the effects of cystinosis and taking meds for like 8 years on my body. Yeah. So over the last year, I've really, really instilled and learned to accept where I'm at. And today will be this, and tomorrow we'll see. And that compassion piece, like it's okay. Like that's okay to have this rest day, but it's been tough to get there.
Well, yeah. I mean, cystinosis can be a really scary disease because the factor is we're all slightly different, and it is a slow disease. It's a degrading disease, so we don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. Because we're all different. I mean, we don't know what the future holds. Unfortunately, we can't see that far.
Yeah,
being present, mindful. Today we have today.
Yeah, self-compassion, I feel like, is very important.
Yeah.
I think the thing I struggle with the most is the idea of just not having control.
Yeah, that absolutely terrifies me. I won't lie. I've been really focused on working out lately, and trying to keep as much control as I can, working on my hand muscles, working on my leg muscles. I work out almost every day now because I'm absolutely terrified of muscle deterioration and losing that ability to do things.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm the same way. I'm swimming, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing the things I can to maintain what I have. And I'm trying to focus on today and letting go of some of that anger and that re-traumatization to work with self-compassion and acceptance and just, you know what? If you work out every day, Devin, or if we can do what we do, we can just walks every day, that is also more than what some others do. And so
I have those little hand squishy thingies. So
yeah,
yeah, I have those that I use.
Yeah, and you're showing up, like you're showing up, and that's why I tell myself a lot. Hey, you showed up. You're showing up. You're doing the best you can.
Yeah, my husband's been really awesome. He spent a lot of time in the gym because his dad used to do bodybuilding and stuff, so he knows like certain workouts and stuff. So he'll help me out with that, and he's really helpful and really motivating. I'm quite a lucky woman.
Yeah, that's awesome. Support.
Yeah, exactly.
Support.
He's such great support. Like he's always there for me. He's the first person that will always be like, you can do this. I believe in you. He's very what's the word I'm thinking about? Not confident. Can't even think. I thought the tip of my tongue and it's going to drive me nuts now. But he's very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important to have supportive people in our lives in whatever shape, form that looks like.
And my mom adores him, so there's that.
What's not to adore?
I seem to maybe I hit at the conference. He's like, I want to go back. I miss everyone. I'm like, I miss them too. We'll have to see if we can save money for the international conference.
Nice.
It's nice to have the conferences. Honestly, I think it's a really good thing for people to be able to go to, because I think being around everyone that has experienced similar things and have that positive energy where everyone kind of understands each other is extremely helpful. And it just makes you feel so much better about yourself. And it's just such a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely not something we get every day.
No.
The community, yeah.
Yeah.
So I find it's also just being grateful for like, okay, I have 2 feet and I can walk. I have lungs in my, air in my lungs. Like I can talk. Like I can, like just little things, like, things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on like advocacy or those last questions we were discussing?
Advocate to educate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Advocate to educate and compassion.
Yes.
I think one of the things that parents did, I think in like, at least when I was a kid, and I kind of wish they didn't, was some parents would come into the school and talk to like the kids in the school about what cystinosis is and stuff like that. And honestly, it just makes situations worse. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Because I got bullied more when they found out about it. It was totally backfired. It did not end well.
Yeah, kids can be rough.
Yeah, but fortunately, if you're different, then you're picked on.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We could probably just end on that note on advocacy and getting your voice out there and, educating. Maybe not through your parents, but
I know their heart is in the right place, but it didn't end well.
No, I hear ya.
I think going to like Washington and like your local government's important too. Just to make sure that policies cover you, or that you can get help get stuff passed that
Yeah.
makes your
Well,
life easier.
I can only imagine like what you guys deal with in America for all your medication coverage, because it's super different in Canada. But I've heard all the stories and what you guys have to go through, and man, I don't envy you. You guys sound like you have to go through a roller coaster.
Yeah.
That's rough.
When I used to be on Procysby, I was lucky I had medical Medicaid, because if I didn't, the copay was going to be like $23,000.
Oh dear God.
And I was like, what? I don't have $23,000.
The worst I get is sometimes it takes me a while to get my medication. I just call the pharmacy and they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Not here. No.
Yeah.
There's a rare disease program, I think it's called. I'm not quite sure the exact name. I could totally be getting it wrong.
Rare.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if you have a different one or if we have the same one, but I know there's something, because we go through the hospital for all our meds, and all of them are covered by a certain program, and I don't even have to do anything really.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
I was in the Procysby study for 7 years, so they continue to provide it for me, luckily. But the program that actually provides it for me is called Transcend Rare, and so they ship it out from Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still on Cystigon. I actually couldn't go on Process B. It made me super sick.
Oh.
And I was actually bedridden because I was like just so sick. Like I was bedridden for a month because they're like, well, we want you to test it out for a month to see if everything settles okay. And I was bedridden for that whole month.
Aww.
I think that's all the questions.
Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks CRN for sponsoring us.